Welcome to Screen Time. It's movies, streaming, and everything in between. Gary Tanguay, Drew Yanno. The topic on today's show is Michael Keaton. And Drew's wife has always said that there's a resemblance between Michael Keaton and Drew.
It's the
You want to tell us? You and you have brown eyes, and he has blue eyes, as you've said.
Other than that, we're a spitting image.
Other than that, that's it. But it's interesting because I've known Drew for over 20 years. And since day one, I know that he is, or I knew, I should say, that he is a huge Michael Keaton fan. And I've been up and down. Right now, I am up. I am one of the biggest Michael Keaton fans that you will find right now. Early in his career, not so much, but that's what we're going to talk about. The topic is Michael Keaton. So let's begin at the beginning. Drew, why did you always like this guy so much? And we'll start talking about some of his earlier projects.
Well, I think I got to give you some history because you have to understand who he is, where he came from. And I kind of always, I knew this even then. Like his name isn't even Michael Keaton. His name is Michael John Douglas, but he couldn't, because of SAG, he couldn't be Michael Douglas because there was a Michael Douglas. And there was also, as you well know, a Mike Douglas, who was a talk show host in Philadelphia. So he picked the name Keaton out of the phone book, supposedly. But he's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Irish Catholic family. Went to Kent State for a couple of years. And then, believe it or not, he was on Mr. Rogers.
Right.
And then he went to LA and became a stand-up comic. And that's when I first experienced Michael Keaton. And I thought he was pretty funny. He's not like the hysterical guys today that you see that are, really great. But he was funny, and he had the physical comedy, and there was just something about him. And I know he ended up on not the Mary Tyler Moore show with Ted Baxter and all that stuff, but she had a variety show after that, and he was on that. And he, somehow resonated with people. He, as you know, he wanted to be an actor, and he ended up getting a job in a movie called Rabbit Test, which no one I think has ever seen. But then he came out of the gate big time in a movie called Night Shift, which is when I really fell in love with the guy. He played Bill Blazowski. Him and Henry Winkler were attendants in the coroner's office, and they decide to run. They call themselves love brokers. They decided to run a house of prostitution, and of course Winkler's the stickler, and Keaton's the funny guy. And I haven't seen it in a long time. It would be interesting to see if it stands up. I recommend people to try and watch it. You can find it, voice remote into your TV. You'll find it. Probably got to pay $3.99 to see it, but it's worth it. But he was hysterical in it, and that set him off. So
that's when I first saw him. I thought of him as a character actor, and he obviously became a leading man. But I think that's one of the
first, though. It was all comedy at first.
All comedy at first, correct. I always thought of him as the funny sidekick. But I think, as we've seen today, that great character actors have become leading men.
Well, and he did that in Mr. Mom. Remember Mr. Mom?
Well, that was my next point. When Mr. Mom came out, that was like, oh wow, this guy can carry a movie. But back to Night Shift, because that was directed by Ron Howard, right? Who was coming off of Happy Days with Henry Winkler. And I think what Keaton did in that movie, and I think Winkler's great. He's obviously had a resurgence, in his career with Barry. It's outstanding. But I think that Keaton kind of stole the show from the Fonz in Night Shift.
He did. And I would be remiss as a writer not to mention who the writers were of that. And they were the guys who were the Farrelly brothers before the Farrelly brothers. They were, what's her name? Lowell Gans and Babaloo Mandel. These guys, they were hysterical. They did that. They did City Slickers. They did a bunch of really funny movies.
They wrote Fever Pitch, who Pete and Bob directed.
Yes, Fever Pitch. Yeah. They were like legendary in Hollywood, and they did that, and they did a great job writing. But I think Keaton probably, ad-libbed a ton.
And what's interesting is I saw an interview with Keaton about why he became a stand-up comic, because he always wanted to be an actor. But what he said was he was bored. And he was driving a cab, and he was working all the jobs that actors work. And he just started to write material, and he just found it a good acting exercise. Because you're right. I don't think, I think I've seen some of his stand-up, but, he was never Bill Burr or you know,
Sebastian
you know,
Maniscalco.
Dave Chappelle, but I don't think he ever wanted to be. But that just goes to show how talented he is because he did make a living, and that's how he paid the bills before he became a
it got
great
him noticed.
comedic actor.
It got him noticed, as it does often. A lot of stand-up comics go from stand-up comedy to, the movies. So it worked. And, like I said, Mr. Mom, I remember, was huge, like you said, because he carried it.
Right.
Also, I think about it, he's a stay-at-home dad, way ahead of today, where there's a billion stay-at-home dads. There was none then. It was great.
Right.
He did a really nice job.
Yeah, and also Terry Garr was in that.
Yeah,
as
I
well.
loved her. One of my favorites.
She was great, and she was also a big star at the time too. I can't remember if God was before or after that.
She did God. She also did Young Frankenstein.
No, Frankenstein. Right. Terry Garr.
We'll do a show on her.
We should. Yeah, I agree. Do
you remember Johnny Dangerously?
I do. Not a big fan of that one.
I don't know why, but I got a kick out of the swearing that wasn't swearing. It was kind of a Saturday Night Live routine, maybe
Right.
for 10 minutes, but I kind of liked it, and I thought he was good in it. And then came Beetlejuice,
And that was with Alec Baldwin was in that, and Gina Davis, right? Too.
Yeah, Tim Burton, though, big, huge thing. I mean,
Tim
think what he
Burton.
did with the makeup and all the stuff. It was a huge hit.
Well, I've always thought that everything that Keaton is in, he is great. I just wasn't a Beetlejuice guy.
Oh, I wasn't either.
Like the Johnny Dangerously thing, that didn't really resonate with me. But I always thought that he delivered. I mean, he commits. When he played Beetlejuice, he was all in. I mean, forget
Same with
it.
Batman. Same with Batman.
Batman blew me away. See,
Yeah.
that's when you knew that, okay, this guy can act.
Yeah.
And I'm going to compare him to Robin Williams. And some people may say that's a stretch, but hear me out.
No, I don't think.
You know what I'm saying, right? I mean, Robin Williams is one of the great comic geniuses of all time. We understand that. But when he did Dead Poets Society, less was more. Now, Michael Keaton went from playing these roles in Mom, right? Or Beetlejuice or Night Shift, where they were like over the top comedic actors, not so much Mom, but certainly Beetlejuice and Johnny Dangerously. But, he comes into a movie and all of a sudden as Batman, it's all about the eyes and less is more. And he pulled it off.
And his first dramatic turn was Clean and Sober. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I did, and it's on my list.
I remember seeing it going, holy shit, this is a funny guy. He's not funny in this. He's like dead serious, straight, great actor. And that's when I knew. But, another one of my favorites is Multiplicity. If anybody has never seen Multiplicity, you got to see it, where he gets cloned 4 times. The way he pulls that off, that reminds me of Robin Williams. That's the kind of thing Robin Williams could have done. And I thought it was great.
I think that I need to see that. I have not seen that.
You never saw Multiplicity?
I haven't seen Multiplicity. See it. So I need to see that.
Very good, very good.
I loved Clean and Sober. I love that movie. And I thought that what Keaton did in that movie is kind of what Sandra Bullock did in 28 Days.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff. Really, really, really deep and really, really good. And I think that Keaton is kind of like, I look at him now as like the everyman. Don't you think? I don't look at him as a leading man.
As an older guy, yes.
Yeah,
as an older guy.
But even younger, like I never looked at him as a Cruise.
Oh no, he wasn't a heartthrob.
Yeah.
Look, he did things like Jackie Brown and Out of Sight, which were terrific. His, not leading roles.
Right.
And Birdman, of course, which I've never seen. I have to confess, movie guy, never seen Birdman. I know it's nominated for Academy Award. For some reason, I didn't want to see him in it. I don't know why. I didn't want to see him in it.
And you know what, Drew? I watched it this afternoon.
Oh, did you?
And you know what?
I don't need to see it.
You don't need to see it. And I'm going to tell you why. And this is for the people watching. The acting is terrific. And I understand why I won for cinematography. The cinematography is terrific. It's a little overdone. I don't need to go through a hallway again with a camera. I've kind of like, I got it. It's a terrific behind the scenes look at the theater world. And I think that it shows, first of all, he was fantastic in it. it's a weird movie.
He got nominated.
It got nominated. You know what? But it's weird. You know, it's just weird. There's a lot of it's in his head, and you don't know what's real, and you don't know
Not my
what's
kind of
not.
movie, I have to say.
It's not your kind of movie at all.
As you,
And the ending is the best part, not because it's over, okay, but because it was very creative and it fits with the rest of the movie. It's somewhat, I would say the ending is similar to the feather in Forrest Gump.
yeah.
You know,
Well, it's interesting because he follows that up with Spotlight, which another Academy Award thing, and he was great in it, and he plays the editor of the Boston Globe in the Priest Crisis. So, but we talk about uh movies, streaming, and in between, right? Everything in between. The whole reason we thought of this, and it was your idea, I got to give you credit, was talking about actors who are using streaming now. They're appearing in stuff that's streaming, whether it's a series or a film, which I keep telling everybody, there's no more movies. Sure, you can see a 2-hour movie on streaming, but that's like, oh, look at that. Oh, I'll watch for 2 hours. Maybe if it's any good, you'll do it. If someone's told you it's good. But it's mostly this. It's like, and that brings us to Dope Sick, which is what prompted us to do this.
can I mention two other projects just before that, just to show his range?
Yep.
Because I mean, Drew and everybody knows, I act, I'm auditioning, I'm studying, I take it very seriously. And when it comes to range and how certain actors produce that range, Keaton does it. He does it amazing. He does an amazing job, but he doesn't necessarily change his colors. Not like Christian Bale, right? Who at some point in time you don't recognize, or not like Daniel Day-Lewis. He uses his body, he uses his instrument the same, and that's even more difficult, Drew. But God damn it, he delivers every time. And I'll give you two examples. Did you ever see The Other Guys?
Yes.
He plays and it's totally over the top, tongue in cheek, and he's fucking great. Yep. He's great. I mean, it's a comedy, right? But like, and here's a Keaton, big star, takes a supporting role, and he plays the over the top, satirical, stereotypical detective who yells it, and he's great at it. The other one is, did you ever? And I don't think you did you ever see Spider-Man: Homecoming?
No.
He plays the villain. And yeah, I didn't. Your daughter was out of the house, so I didn't think you watched it. He plays Vulture, Adrian Toomes, the bad guy. And there's a scene, Drew, in the kitchen where Spider-Man is like, there, Peter Parker and Peter knows he's a bad guy, and Keaton knows that he knows he's a bad guy, and we know he's a bad guy. It's kind of like, and up until that point, we thought he was just a nice guy, but everybody knows, but nobody's saying it. It's phenomenal acting because you could cut the tension with a knife. And, of course, at the end, I don't know, freaking wings grow out of him and he becomes like a wacko superhero. But up till then, he's fabulous. I'm sorry, go ahead. I wanted to get that in before we get to Dope Sick.
Well, let's talk about Dope Sick, because here we go. I've talked about this before on this podcast. The whole thing with streaming now is you go out to dinner with another couple or two other couples. Almost the first question that comes out, hey, you watching anything? And of course, most recently, Friday night, we went out to dinner and said, hey, what are you watching? Dope Sick. And I can't tell you how many times in the last 3 weeks I've heard Dope Sick. So it's like, damn, I got to watch Dope Sick.
Right.
And I've seen 3 episodes. I haven't finished it, but he's just Michael Keaton. He's, like you said, he's everyman. He can play that guy. He can play Ramsey Clark in The Trial of Chicago 7, which, Aaron Sorkin did, a year or two ago. Great movie. Worth, which is about the guy who the lawyer the U.S. government selected to find out how much to pay the victims of 9/11.
Right.
He was so understated in that. And he did a marvelous job in it. And, that's him. He's just,
Did you see the founder?
I saw The Founder, yeah.
You know what? And there's another example, because he's not a good guy in The Founder.
No, he's not a good guy.
He's not a good guy, but he still plays it off. He leaves the wife. He cheats the McDonald brothers out of the deal, but but he can still do it without putting on the black hat and the mustache and the cape and tying, tying somebody to the railroad track. You haven't seen all of Dopesick, so I won't give it away, but he continues to play his role in such an understated way. And actually, I did let Drew know about some of the things about Dopesick down the road, but if you haven't seen it, everybody needs to watch it. I also thought that the acting in Dopesick was tremendous. Everybody in that cast. Again, another example why streaming is phenomenal. There is not a bad actor in that cast. That cast, I mean, you'll see, Drew, that cast is loaded, and the character and the actors, every damn one of them, man, just freaking nails it.
Well, Keaton does what I love actors to do. He acts with his face. It's not so much what he says,
right,
or even if he says anything, he acts with his face.
Right.
And it's amazing. It's very subtle because, if you're in a theater, you can't do that. You have to exaggerate. Because people got to see it 20 rows, 50 rows away. In a movie, it's less. Less is more, as you say. And, he does that in this a lot. And he did it in Worth. It's just, I'm a fan. He's probably done 50 movies. Thank God he keeps getting work. So.
Well, you look at him as I'm sure you did. I mean, you look at the IMDb page, and then you go from movies, then you look at TV too, which, and he's still shooting things. On your list, he's in your top 5, huh?
I don't know. Top 10, certainly. I just enjoy him. I've enjoyed the stuff he's done. And like I said, the comedy, I just remember seeing him probably on the Mike Douglas show, some dumb thing like that. I remember seeing him and thinking, it's a funny guy. I kind of like I kind of liked his way, And so when he became an actor, I wasn't surprised. And Night Shift, was what.
Oh, did we mention The Paper?
The Paper, he was in The Paper as well. Ron Howard film.
The line I love in The Paper, Spalding Gray, another great actor, is the editor of the New York Times, and he steals the story off his desk, but because he's working at the New York Post or whatever it was at the time, and I think the logo for the Times was, we bring you the world, the New York Times brings you the world. And Spalding Gray said, you're losing out on he was offered him a job to work for the Times. And he said, you're missing out on an opportunity to deliver the news to the world. And Keaton goes on the line. He says, yeah, I don't live in the fucking world. I live in New York fucking city. And he hangs up the phone. And I think those are the everyman moments where, how many times have we wanted to say that to somebody? We wanted to just tell somebody to F off and hang up the phone,
Yeah.
So, all right, Drew, any final thoughts on Michael Keaton?
No, I'm looking forward to the end of Dopesick and whatever he's got going next. If you look at his IMDb, he's got stuff that he's lined up. I notice he's in a few of these comic book movies, and they all are because they make a ton of money. Because not only do they get what they get, and they get those, you get paid forever. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Listen, they're fun.
Yeah.
That's another thing is like, again, to put on my snobby actor hat, if you get to run around in front of a green screen and like beat something up and shoot a gun, what's more fun? Or I'm not saying shoot a gun, but if you get to run around being a superhero of some sort in front of a green screen and get paid a lot of money, what's more fun than that?
He was in something called American Assassin. Before we go, I want to say he played a bad guy in that. And he's like fighting and doing all kinds of, it's a crappy kind of murder mystery kind of, global thing. And he's like doing stunts and stuff, and he's the bad guy. He's like a CIA guy. So that was like totally out of character, but get a job. It's nice. Get a job. Like keep working.
Well worth our time to dedicate this edition of Screen Time to Michael Keaton. Drew's going to finish Dopesick. If you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. I'm Gary Tanguay for Drew Yanno. Thanks for watching Screen Time, streaming and everything in between.